Welcome. So, if you're a new believer trying to navigate a world that is just full of loud, conflicting opinions, well, this explainer is designed specifically for you. Think of it as a personal mentorship guide. Because let's be real, every single day, voices are speaking over your life. Some come from the people around you, some come from your own mind, and yeah, some come from God. So today, we're going to learn exactly how to filter out that destructive noise and anchor your identity entirely in God's truth. I want to start by asking you a really direct question. Who are you listening to? Like, who is actually writing your identity right now? To find some absolute clarity on this, we're going to use this brilliant blueprint straight from the Bible. We're traveling way back, like around 1100 BC, to the ancient city of Shiloh. This was during the really turbulent period of the Judges, and here we meet a faithful woman named Hannah. Now, Hannah was facing a massive problem she couldn't solve, and a sorrow that literally no human comfort could relieve.
Okay, let's dive into this. Hannah was barren, and in her culture, that carried immense social and economic weight. People just assumed you had done something wrong. But her barrenness wasn't just a physical issue. It was this profound identity crisis, and it was amplified by three very distinct, really oppressive voices surrounding her. You've got the voice of shame, the voice of insensitivity, and the voice of misjudgment. Honestly, you might actually recognize these voices operating in your own life today. So voice number one, Peninnah, the voice of shame.
Why do you weep?
Picture the heavy, dramatic shadows of Hannah's household.
Look at my hands,
they were
full of
completely
life.
dominated by her rival, Peninnah.
Where are
Peninnah
your
had
sons
multiple
to help
children,
you?
and she weaponized Hannah's empty hands to just pour deep, bitter shame directly into her wounds. The source material notes how absolutely relentless this was. This wasn't just some one-time argument. Year after year, Peninnah kept provoking her, mocking her, and trying to irritate her. Peninnah is the perfect representation of those external bullies in our lives, right? Those voices of shame that try to define us strictly by our failures, our lack, or our past. They're constantly whispering that because you don't have certain things, you're somehow inherently less valuable.
Then we have voice number two, Elkanah, the voice of insensitivity.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Elkanah completely centers himself. He was a devout guy, and he truly loved his wife deeply. He even gave her a double portion of sacrifices to show that love. But look at what he asks. Am I not better to you than 10 sons? He's totally well-meaning, but completely insensitive. He misses the depth of her grief entirely. And this beautifully illustrates the people in our own lives who genuinely love us but try to comfort us by unintentionally minimizing our pain. They just can't reach where you're hurting. And honestly, they kind of want you to just get over it because your grief is making them uncomfortable.
And that brings us to voice number three, Eli, the voice of misjudgment.
So feeling completely desperate, Hannah retreats from the family feast and goes to the tabernacle. And there, Eli the high priest observes her weeping silently. Just her lips are moving. Now, because silent, deep intercession was actually highly unusual in the ancient world, Eli jumps to a totally faulty conclusion. He misreads her genuine, agonizing grief as intoxication. He literally says,
drunk?
"How long will you stay drunk?" Eli
to the
represents that voice of misjudgment, which, let's face it, sometimes even comes from religious leaders. It's that immense pressure to look spiritually composed and put together on the outside, when in reality, you are just completely breaking down on the inside.
So Hannah's completely surrounded by shame, insensitivity, and religious misjudgment. But notice what she does not do. She didn't argue with Peninnah. She didn't settle for Elkanah's pity. And she didn't collapse defensively under Eli's harsh accusation. She knew this profound truth. You cannot fight the noise with more noise, right? You can't find your true identity by shouting back at the people who totally misunderstand you. Section 4. The Pivot. Entering the tabernacle. I want you to imagine the warm, golden God rays piercing through the ancient, pitted stone of the tabernacle. While everyone else was out eating and celebrating, Hannah retreated to the intimate silence of God's presence. She chose to seek the only voice that could actually change her reality. And there she engages in what we can call raw prayer.
I pray you.
This is literally the
Give me a
reckless pouring
son.
out of your soul without any need for composure or perfect theology. And hey, new believer, hear me on this. God listens to your desperate, silent weeping just as carefully as he listens to polished, perfect words. He doesn't require a performance from you.
Hannah's actions actually give us a perfect three-step model here. First, she approached God with her honest, bitter pain. Second, she poured out her soul without a filter. She didn't try to hide her anger or her sorrow at all. And third, she left the burden at the altar.
True meditative prayer functions as divine therapy. It's a way to offload the absolute deepest stresses of your heart to a God who is actually strong enough to carry them.
And this brilliantly illustrates the incredible physiological and spiritual shift that happens when you truly pray. Look at the contrast. Before this raw prayer, Hannah was bitter, weeping, and unable to even eat. But after pouring out her soul, the text says her countenance was no longer sad, and she went and ate in peace. She was completely transformed, physically and emotionally.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. The peace arrived before the pregnancy. She didn't have the baby yet. Her circumstances hadn't changed one bit, but she had changed. Prayer isn't just some transactional vehicle for getting answers, you know? It's divine therapy that gives you the power to find joy and peace while you are waiting for God's perfect timing.
Which brings us to Section 5, the one truth. God's voice prevails.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Because ultimately, Peninnah's mockery didn't define her. Elkanah's insensitivity didn't limit her. And Eli's misjudgment didn't stop her. The only truth that prevailed was God's. The text says, "And the Lord remembered her." Now, this doesn't mean God had somehow forgotten her. It's actually a Hebrew idiom meaning God actively attended to her prayer and moved on her behalf. This proves to us for sure that God's version of our identity is the absolute only one that stands the test of time.
So, Hannah conceives and gives birth to a son, and she names him Samuel. In Hebrew, Samuel literally means God has heard. This was a permanent, generational testimony. Every single time she called her little boy's name, she was sending praise up to heaven. She named her ultimate miracle after the only voice that actually mattered.
All right, to wrap up this explainer, let's lock in our core mentorship takeaways. As you walk out your faith, you've got to learn to just ignore the noise of shame. Reject that well-meaning minimization from people who frankly just don't understand your pain. Bypass the religious misjudgment that demands fake perfection, and instead, practice the therapy of raw, unfiltered prayer. Pour it all out and anchor your identity entirely in the God who hears you.
I want to leave you with this final, vital question. Who is writing your identity today? Which voice are you handing the pen to? From this moment forward, I challenge you to silence the Peninnahs, the Elkanahs, and the Elis in your life and let God's voice be the final word on who you are. Because letting the right voice speak changes absolutely everything. Keep seeking Him, keep praying those raw prayers, and just watch how He transforms your life.